Hey everybody, welcome to episode 16 of Chord Expansion. Today we are going to be talking about a chord movement that is very commonly used in jazz standards. It is referred to as a turnaround. In traditional standards, this chord movement happens all over the place, and it is a great thing to really know inside and out. There's a ton of variations that you can do on it, and we're going to cover all of them. So what a turnaround is a set of four chords that is used to either set up a new section of a piece or to bring a piece back to the top of the form. So if you look through your real book and you just look at the ending to a bunch of standards, you're going to see this happen a lot. These turnarounds are all over the place. There are two main kinds of turnarounds. There is the long turnaround and then the short turnaround. So like I said, we have four chords within our turnaround. And with a long turnaround, each of those chords is going to be played for a full bar. So a long turnaround is 4 bars long, and a short turnaround, each of those chords is only going to be played for 2 beats as opposed to a full bar. So a short turnaround is 2 bars long, and that's mostly what we're going to focus on today is the short turnaround, because that's the one that you encounter more so than the long turnaround, I would say, at the end of standards. So we'll go over exactly what a turnaround is, and then I'm going to show you a couple of different variations that you can do within that. And if you would like access to everything that I go over today with additional content not covered in the video, you can head over to patreon.com/MikeGaudetteMusic. Okay, so for today we're going to do everything in the key of B flat major, and the most basic kind of like first turnaround that you should learn is 1 6 2 5. So if we're in the key of B flat major, the 1 chord is B flat major, the 6th chord is going to be G dominant 7. Now in some turnarounds they might play the 6th chord as minor, but I think the dominant 7 is more common, and even if they do play minor, you can substitute for dominant 7 and it's still going to sound fine. And so as we learn more and more of these, you're going to see a lot of these chords can be substituted and mixed and matched, and that's what's so great about turnarounds and what makes it so vast and gives us so many different options. So we start with B flat major 7, then the 6th chord is G dominant 7, then we go to the 2 chord, which is C minor 7, and then we go to the 1 chord, which is F dominant 7. Okay, so 1 6 2 5. All right, if you're familiar with rhythm changes, right, that's how a rhythm changes progression starts. It starts out with a 1 6 2 5 turnaround. Okay. And that's, like I said, that's a great little progression that you can play at the end of a piece to set up the start of the song. So if you're playing a song in B flat major, right, and it's coming maybe to the last 2 5 1, turnaround right here. Right, brings us nicely back to the top of the form. So that's like the main purpose of these turnarounds. So what I did right there was I took those Freddie Green voicings that we did in the previous episode, the previous 2 episodes, and I just turned that into a turnaround. So I did my B flat major Freddie Green, then I moved it down to G7, then I moved it to C minor 7, then I moved it down to F7. Okay, and then we could also do the same thing, but we can start with our B flat major 7 Freddie Green voicing on the 5th string instead. Okay, and in addition to that, we could do 4-note voicings. We can go beyond the Freddie Green, so we could take our B flat major 7 chord and add the F note on top to get that, like, you know, textbook B flat major 7. Then move it down to G7 with the 5th on top, and then move to C minor 7 with the 5th on top, and then F7 with the 5th on top. Okay, in addition to that, I'm just going to kind of run through a couple of the variations once you get that basic chord pattern. We can, you know, take our dominant chords, so we can keep the B flat major 7 the same, but now when we have our dominant chords, rather than just playing it straight, we could take the 5 and sharp it, right, get a little more tension on the dominance, right, and then C minor 7, right, you could do a sharp 5 on the F as well, so the G7 and the F7, you could both alternate to give it a sharp 5. Right, any of those sound great. So I would recommend just taking some of these voicings and just kind of experiment with them and see what you come up with. Okay, so then the next thing that I would recommend once you get comfortable being able to do it with just kind of the stock voicings, doing the 1 6 2 5, the next thing I would say to do is take the 1 chord and substitute it for the 3 chord. So instead of playing B flat major 7, actually play D minor 7. Right, so this is another turnaround that we see a lot, 3-6-2-5. So 1-6-2-5 and 3-6-2-5 are both very closely related because the 1 chord and the 3 chord share a lot of the same notes. If you play B flat major 7 and then D minor 7, right, very similar, right? It's just a very slight change. When we do it starting on the 1 chord, it sounds more like we're starting at home base and then building more tension to an eventual resolution, whereas when we start on the D minor 7, it starts with more tension right off the bat, right? So if we take some of those same ideas that we just did with the Freddie Green voicings, but we switch it to 3-6-2-5, so instead of starting with B flat major, we start with D minor 7, we would have this. Okay, so definitely a different sound. The 1-6-2-5 was right, whereas the 3-6-2-5 is. All right, we could do the same thing on the 5th string with the Freddie Green. Now we can expand the Freddie Green voicings if we want, like we did in the first example. So we start with D minor 7 with the 5th on top. G7 full, C minor 7 full, F7 full, and then B flat major 7. We could do the same thing where we take our dominant 7 chords and add sharp 5s to them, which gives us this. Okay, and I wouldn't necessarily play turnarounds exactly like this. This is kind of more of an exercise just to get these chords moving and to show you some of the different movements that you can do within the chords, different variations, because it's really all about going through this on your own and coming up with sounds that you like, because there's so many different options when it comes to these turnarounds. I could also do it up here. I could do the full D minor 7 up here. Now this gives me a great opportunity for some voice leading where I could put flat 9s on the dominant 7 chord, so I can go like this. G7 flat 9, C minor 7, F7 flat 9. So I have that voice leading on top where it goes. That chromatic voice leading. Okay, really cool sound. And just for reference, if we wanted to take any of these ideas that we're going over right now and adjust them so that they work over a long turnaround, then we do the same thing, but we hold each chord out for 4 beats instead. So we'd have, right, or okay, so depending on what song you're using these over, adjust accordingly. But like I said, you're most likely going to encounter the short turnaround a lot more frequently than the long turnaround. Okay, and then the last substitution that we're going to go over is the diminished 7 chord being substituted for the 6 chord. So that might sound a little confusing, but hopefully we can clarify what that means. So a lot of times what people will do, rather than playing the 6 chord, so rather than playing G7 in this instance, they actually do this. They start with B flat major 7, then they go up a half step to B, and they play a diminished 7 chord. So you might be confused as to why they would use a diminished 7 chord rather than the dominant 7 chord, but diminished 7 chords can actually function as 2 different chords. They can function as just regular diminished 7, or they can function as a dominant 7 flat 9 chord. So it's kind of a lot to get into as to why that is, but I think one of the most simple ways to explain it would be this for anybody who's unfamiliar with it. If you're familiar with the diminished 7 voicing on the 5th string, in this case it's 4-5-3-5, right? You call that a C-sharp diminished 7 chord. Think of it like this. If you know your C7 chord, just like the textbook C7 bar chord on the 5th string, so 3-5-3-5, right? Intervallically right here we have the root, the 5th, the flatted 7th, and then the 3rd. So now watch this. If we keep all of the notes the same, but we take this middle finger and we put it down on the 4th fret of the 5th string, all of a sudden it becomes that C-sharp diminished 7 chord. Now notice only one note has actually changed, right? The C from the C-sharp. All of the other 3 notes are the same. which means that we're taking the C note and raising it a half step, which becomes the flat 9. So this can be called a C7 flat 9 chord. It's a rootless voicing, meaning that there's no C note in the chord, but it's a rootless dominant 7 flat 9 voicing. So hopefully that clears it up a bit, and so that's why we can use that over the turnaround as well. So rather than going from B flat major 7 to G7, we go B flat major 7 to B diminished 7. Right, and now we get that chromatic movement in the bass instead of we have. And then you get another half step, because then you just go up another fret and you get the C minor 7 chord. Right, this is something that we see a lot in rhythm changes as well. Rhythm changes is a great example of what turnarounds sound like, especially when you're doing one that starts with the 1-6-2-5 and then it goes to the 3-6-2-5. So it's great just for a little reference as to the difference in the sound between 1-6-2-5 and 3-6-2-5. So you could hear the similarities, but those slight differences that make them unique to themselves. So we have B flat major 7, B diminished 7, C minor 7, F7. Okay, different sound, but it still works, right? Another variation that can be used pretty much any time. And you could build lines off of this. You can arpeggiate some of these, like, right, I just played arpeggios, but I was using that chromatic movement to kind of dictate where my line was going. So we do that same thing down on the 5th string with the Freddie Green voicings. We can also expand it and do 4-note 7th chords. There I did the F7 flat 9, right? So my dominant chords, I know I have the option of putting the flat 9 on it if I want, or if I'm down here I can switch to the sharp 5. So all of these different little variations I would encourage you to experiment with. So I can keep a natural 9 if I want on top of the 7th chord. Right, up here. We could also do the 4-note voicings down here on the 5th string. So right there, I did a minor 9 when I got to the 2 chord, and I did a dominant sharp 5 when I got to the F chord. So, you know, all of these different little combinations that you can experiment with. All right, and then the last thing that I would recommend doing once you're able to maneuver comfortably around these different movements on the 6th and 5th string, I would recommend also being able to do it with voicings on the top 4 strings, so from the 4th string to the 1st string. So we can take a lot of these voicings and sort of modify them so that they fit on the top 4 strings. So for example, this first chord, we could do like a B flat 6-9. So we have the root note on top. Then we can take our G7 chord, and all we have to do is take the G note and move it up to the 1st string, and we get this. So we have, then we can do like a C minor 7 on the top 4 strings, F7 on the top 4, and then resolve to like a B flat 6-9. So. All right, another one we can do, we can start up here for our B flat major 7 chord. Right, and then we can do like, you know, B diminished 7, go up a half step, make it diminished, right, that's a nice sound. Then maybe do like a C minor 9, then maybe like an F13. So that one, we're keeping a common tone on top. So a common tone is when you're keeping one note the same throughout the entire progression. So that is a turnaround with a common tone on top. So these are all 1-6-2-5 still, right? I'm starting on B flat. You can do flat 9 right there if you want. So we can also do the same thing, but we can, instead of doing the 1 chord, we do the 3 chords. So now, instead of going, I can start on D minor 7. Right, slightly different sound starting in the 3 chord. We could also start up here for our D minor 7 chord, just bar the 10th fret on the top 4 strings. Make it a diminished, C minor 9, 13 flat 9 or just regular 13. And then B flat major 9 is a really nice chord to resolve to. Or we could do. So there's so many different variations. Once you start getting comfortable with these voicings and seeing all of the different little inner movements that you can do with the dominant chords, altering them with different color tones on top of the minor and major chords, it really opens up a whole new world of different chord possibilities that you can do with these progressions. Okay, so that is a good little starting point to get some turnarounds going. We went over a couple of the substitutions. We start with the 1-6-2-5, then we changed it to 3-6-2-5, and then we did 1-6-2-5, but instead of playing the 6th chord, we substituted it for the B diminished 7 chord, going up a half step from our root note. So there are still so many more different combinations that we can do with turnarounds, so there will be a part 2 and maybe even a part 3 to this episode, because these can get pretty vast and pretty extensive. And yeah, that is it. That is our episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. And everything that I played today is available over at the Patreon page at patreon.com/MikeOdetMusic, as well as some additional turnarounds that weren't covered in the video. And yeah, that is it. That's our episode. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys at the next episode. Take care.